Theudachild, as the briefly mother of the king's son, could claim to be the rightful widow. And as a royal widow, she had access to the treasury. Frankish queens couldn't command armies, but they could hand out gifts, coins to a bishop, jewels to a noble, to build alliances. Theudachild had bigger plans. She loaded up all of Sheribert's gold and jewels onto carts. She must have had help from some bribed guards and servants. She stashed the treasure and then, channeling her inner Roman empress, proposed marriage to the next eldest brother, Guntram. Guntram, ever the crafty one, saw an opportunity. He told her to come, bring her treasure, and he'd give her an honorable place. Theudachild, hopeful, rode south with the goods. Guntram welcomed her, took the treasure, laughed in her face, called her unworthy, and then, just like Chilperic had done with Audovera, packed her off to a nunnery in Arles. He then married one of his own ex-wife's former slaves. So much for honor. For Brunhild, watching this unfold from Metz, there was a harsh lesson. Playing politics was dangerous for queens. Men hoarded power and would crush a woman's ambition without a second thought. And Theudachild's story ended even worse. She tried to escape the convent with a Visigoth, was caught, and beaten mercilessly, left to suffer until she died. It was a grim preview of the world Brunhild was navigating. But unlike Theudachild, Brunhild had powerful family connections, ambition, and a keen mind, and she was about to prove that she wouldn't be so easily cast aside. In the months after her wedding, Brunhild was settling into life in Metz. It wasn't Toledo, but it was prosperous, surrounded by pleasant countryside. The view from her palace window included an old Roman amphitheater, where instead of gladiators, they now had bear baiting. Charming. She found the Frankish court a bit rustic. They liked loud national epics instead of sophisticated poetry. She had admirers, but few companions. Her Latin was excellent, but most nobles spoke a deformed version, or Frankish. She missed her mother and sister. The poet, Fortunatus, still hanging around after the wedding, hoping for more work, was a welcome distraction. He matched her education and entertained her with tales of his travels. But soon, Fortunatus was off again, this time to Paris, hired by the recently excommunicated Cheribert. Cheribert, nearing 50 and heirless, was trying to salvage his image with a grand ceremony and a flattering poem. Fortunatus, ever the opportunist, delivered, praising Cheribert as a most excellent king and comparing him to the conquering emperor Trajan. He even sucked up to the clergy, calling Cheribert pious and mature. It was a masterclass in flattery, especially since Cheribert's scandal was still fresh. But the bishops weren't fooled. The church was fighting for its place in this chaotic world. They were trying to enforce rules against incest and married priests, and Cheribert's public defiance was unacceptable. When the epidemic hit Paris, the bishops saw it as divine judgment. They finally excommunicated him. Cheribert's death left his kingdom open for the taking. His brothers, Sigebert, Guntram, and Chilperic, immediately started squabbling over it. Gundevald, Sigebert's illegitimate half-brother, who'd been living at Cheribert's court and was rumored to be his heir, was quickly hustled away and had his hair cut. The Frankish way of saying, "You're out of the running for the throne." Brunhild, meanwhile, got pregnant. This was great news. A male heir would solidify her position. She probably felt a pang of sympathy for Gundevald, another outsider like her, now sidelined. But the baby was a girl, another potential heir for the Frankish world, but not the son Brunhild needed to feel truly secure. Still, the division of Cheribert's lands went ahead in early 568. Paris, the old capital, was declared neutral territory to be shared. The rest was carved up. Chilperic, always feeling cheated, got the smallest share, a patchwork kingdom in the north and southwest. This left him furious, especially since Sigebert got strategically important cities like Tours and Poitiers right in the middle of Chilperic's new lands. Chilperic, ever the hothead, immediately invaded Tours and Poitiers, breaking the fragile. His army was led by his eldest son, Theudebert, the very boy Sigebert had spared years earlier, after another of Chilperic's failed invasions. This forced Theudebert to break his oath to his uncle, a major no-no in this honor-bound society. But Chilperic's attack failed again. He was boxed in, surrounded by his brothers, and, in the south, by Brunhild's people, the Visigoths. Chilperic needed a new strategy. He needed a prestigious alliance to match Sigebert's, and who better than Brunhild's own sister, Galswintha? King Athanagild of Spain wouldn't have considered Chilperic before, but now Chilperic had land next to Spain, and he made an offer no one could refuse. He would give Galswintha a massive mourning gift, not just jewels or a villa, but the entire southern third of his kingdom, 5 cities in the Aquitaine. This was unheard of. Chilperic was risking everything, but he wanted this alliance, and he wanted to outdo Sigebert. Athanagild agreed, but with a condition. Galswintha would convert to Catholicism, but Chilperic had to swear a solemn oath to abandon all other women. Everyone knew this meant Fredegund. Chilperic, eager for the alliance, agreed. Fredegund, the slave girl, was to be sent away. But Fredegund wasn't about to disappear quietly. She kept her own counsel, and she waited. While Chilperic was scrambling for a new bride, Sigebert was basking in the glow of his successful marriage and the birth of his daughter, Ingund. He was building churches, repairing infrastructure in Metz, trying to project an image of a wise, Roman-style ruler. He was also securing his borders, making alliances. He'd already dealt with the Avars in the east and the Saxons in the north. Now, he looked south to Italy, controlled by the Lombards, and, beyond them, the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines, ruling from Constantinople, still saw themselves as the true heirs of Rome and were trying to reclaim Italy. Sigebert wanted to befriend the new Byzantine emperor, Justin II, who was reportedly kind of erratic, and whose wife, Sophia, was the real power behind the throne. To approach the Byzantines subtly, Sigebert turned to an unlikely figure, his father's fourth wife, Radgund. Radgund was a Thuringian princess, captured as a child, forced into marriage with King Clothar, but who had found her escape in fierce piety. She refused to sleep with the king, starved herself, wore hair shirts, even branded herself. Finally, after Clothar murdered her baby brother, she left him entirely and became a nun. Radegund was no ordinary nun. She established one of the first convents for women in Francia, Holy Cross Abbey in Poitiers. From there, she became a major political and religious figure, welcoming dignitaries and corresponding with foreign rulers, including the Byzantines. So, Sigebert and Brunhild sent emissaries to Radegund, including the poet Fortunatus. Their plan: use Radegund's religious connections to open a channel to Byzantium. Radegund wanted a piece of the True Cross, a highly prized relic held in Constantinople. She sent her own messengers with a powerful poem, seemingly a personal account of the Frankish invasion that destroyed her homeland, but also a subtle warning to the Byzantines. The Franks are brutal, but they listen to me. It was a brilliant diplomatic move. The response came from Empress Sophia. She sent the relic, solidifying a connection with Radegund, and, through her, Brunhild. Soon after, Sigebert sent his own embassy, formalizing an alliance with Byzantium. This alliance also created a bond between Brunhild and Radegund. Brunhild, still lonely at court, found a friend in the influential abbess. Radegund even welcomed Brunhild's sister, Galsvintha, when she arrived in Frankish lands for her wedding to Chilperic in July 568. Fortunatus noted their close exchanges, with Radegund offering motherly love. Galsvintha's arrival in Rouen was a spectacle. Chilperic, trying desperately to match Sigebert's prestige, met her with his entire army kneeling. The wedding was in the cathedral, not a repurposed building. Galsvintha came with even more treasure than Brunhild. But less than 6 months later, tragedy struck. Galsvintha caught Chilperic in bed with Fredegund, despite his oath. She was furious, humiliated. She demanded to return home, even if it meant leaving her enormous dowry. Then, one morning, Galsvintha was found dead in her bed, strangled. 3 days later, dressed in Galsvintha's jewels, Fredegund married Chilperic in a quick ceremony at a royal villa. The Frankish world was shocked. Gregory of Tours, the bishop who would chronicle this era, stated plainly what everyone suspected. Chilperic had ordered Galsvintha's murder. Later art would even portray Chilperic himself doing the deed, sometimes with Fredegund watching. Fredegund's origins were murky. She was a slave, and the historical record is silent on her family. This fueled rumors and suspicion. How did a slave gain such power? Some whispered witchcraft. A later story claimed she'd tricked Chilperic's first wife using obscure church law, but that tale wasn't true at the time. Still, it shows Fredegund had a reputation for being clever, maybe even literate, unusual for a slave. She hadn't thrown a fit when Galsvintha arrived. She'd waited. Now she was queen, but her position was shaky. Chilperic had other heirs, sons from his first marriage. Fredegund had to produce children, hopefully sons, to secure her future. Lying in the bed where Galsvintha had died, Fredegund must have felt the weight of it all. Fortunatus, hearing the news, wrote about the 2 towers from Toledo, one broken. Brunhild was devastated. In less than 2 years, she'd lost her homeland, her father, and now her only sister, likely murdered by her own husband. She was alone in a foreign land with a language barrier. Frankish law, the Lex Salica, had surprisingly high values for women, especially those of childbearing age. A free woman was worth as much as an aristocrat, even more if pregnant. A queen's worth was incalculable. But who had the power to enforce justice for Galsvintha? Brunhild knew she couldn't just grieve. She needed political power. She needed allies. The nobles at Sigebert's court were divided into factions. One wanted closer ties with Byzantium, another with Chilperic, a third with Guntram. Brunhild, understandably,